The stagecoach pulled away in a cloud of dry red dust, leaving Clara, May Whitlow, small and pale against the merciless sun. Her bonnet slipped back, revealing sweat-slick curls stuck to her brow. She pressed a trembling hand to the swell of her belly as if to steady the ache inside, an ache that had become too constant to name. Her boots were too large, borrowed from her sister in a rush, and the hem of her dress flapped like torn sails in the wind. No one came to help her down. No one even looked her way. People in the town of Charity had a habit of pretending not to see suffering, especially when it came wrapped in shame. Clara May, barely 18, carried both. From behind the glass of the millinery shop, women in high collars whispered behind gloved hands. Disgraced before she even made it to the ranch, one said. Likely lied about everything, said another. Their reflections warped in the window glass, faces twisted with something sharp and smug. Clara's fingers tightened around her satchel, worn, with the stitching coming loose where Delilah had rushed to repair it. The letter, now creased and damp with sweat, still lay inside. An invitation from Boaz Calder, the fat rancher no one loved but everyone needed. Only Clara hadn't been meant to receive it. That letter was addressed to her older sister. Delilah had crumpled it when she read it, cheeks hot with pride. "I won't marry a man they laugh at in saloons," she'd said, "not even to save our name." Clara, small and pliant, had picked it out of the trash and made a decision no one asked of her. "Why'd you even come?" Sheriff Nolan's voice cut the morning air like a rusted saw. He stepped down from the boardwalk, boots echoing, mustache twitching like a man who enjoyed bad news. "You think Boaz Calder's going to take you in looking like that?" Clara tried to speak. Her mouth opened, but her voice stayed lodged somewhere between her ribs. She looked past him toward the road that led north to Calder's ranch, and then down to her belly, the place where the baby had been twisting with quiet complaint all morning. "You'd best keep walking," Nolan muttered, not unkindly, just cold. "This town don't owe you a cradle." She nodded, swallowing shame like iron filings. She turned away from the sheriff, only to find herself collapsing behind the feed store 10 minutes later, her back sliding down the wood slats, her satchel dropping with a soft thud beside her. The pain had sharpened, not the kind that passed, the kind that warned. She clutched the fabric above her stomach and whispered, "Please, not yet." She didn't remember closing her eyes. Boaz Calder noticed her long before he approached. He'd been trading grain, standing to the side like he always did, broad as a freight wagon, face hidden beneath the brim of a dusty hat. The townsfolk gave him space, not out of respect, but superstition. A man that big, that quiet, was easy to fear, easy to mock when his back was turned. He heard the whispers, heard them say he ate more than he should, that his wife had died because his house was cursed, that no woman would ever stay. He didn't argue. What was the use? But when he saw Clara May slump behind the feed store, saw the way she folded like cloth, his feet moved before his mind had time to stop them. She weighed nothing. He lifted her gently, afraid to bruise the silence she carried like skin. Her bonnet had fallen off. Her face was too pale. The roundness of her belly pressed into his side, and something old stirred in him, something buried. Her lashes fluttered. She whimpered. Boaz didn't know her name, but he knew pain when he saw it. He laid her down on the cot beside the hearth, tucked a damp cloth behind her neck. The cabin smelled of cedar and old ash. He stirred the stew and watched the clock tick too loudly. She didn't wake for hours. When she did, she blinked up at the rafters and asked, "Is this your house?" He nodded once. She struggled to sit, but he held out a hand, not touching, just offering. "Boaz," he said. His voice was deep and slow, like molasses poured in winter. "Clara," she whispered, as if unsure it still belonged to her. The fire snapped. Outside, goats bleated low like ghosts. "I'll be gone by morning," she said, half a question. He didn't answer, just ladled stew into a tin bowl and set it on the table beside her. She didn't eat, just stared into the flames as if something inside her was coming undone. Later, when she slept again, Boaz sat by the stove carving. The cedar block gave under his knife, shape emerging with every stroke. A small wooden horse, a child's toy. He hadn't made one in years. Clara dreamed of the letter. The moment she found Delilah's dress on the bed, the laced blue one they were saving for church, she'd put it on, swallowed her fear, and walked toward a future meant for someone else. She thought of their mother, long dead, of shame, of how quiet Delilah had been when Clara left, only whispering, "Don't tell them it wasn't me." When she woke, there was Stu beside her again, a folded quilt, and Boaz, rocking gently in the chair, his knife still moving in patient circles. She held her belly, breath catching. "It still hurts," she said, soft as wind through pine. He didn't look up, just said, "I know." She stared at the floorboards, searching for something to anchor her. "They wouldn't help me," she whispered. "They said I lied, that the pain wasn't real." Boaz let the silence stretch. Then he rose, walked to the mantel, and returned with a small wooden horse. Its legs were uneven, the tail too short, but it fit in her palm like a prayer. "Made it for my boy," he said. Before. Clara blinked hard. She held the horse against her heart and felt the ache crack. Not break, but crack enough for something warmer to slip in. Outside, the wind carried a new kind of hush. One that didn't come from judgment, but the turning of something deeper. The world had not shifted, but something in her had. Boaz watched her a long moment before speaking again. "You ain't going anywhere tomorrow." Clara looked up. He didn't smile, just walked to the door, opened it, and stared into the evening. "Let him talk," he muttered. "Let him knock." And from far off, as if summoned by his words, came the crunch of boots on gravel. Voices. Too many for the hour. The sound of the town arriving. The knock came just after sunrise, slow, deliberate, as if the caller knew exactly how much dread lived on the other side of that door. Boaz stood still, a tin cup of black coffee warm in his thick hand. Clara was in the back room, curled around a pillow, breathing through pain that came in measured waves now, like the ocean inside her had decided to break against the shore. Boaz opened the door with no hurry. Sheriff Nolan stood on the porch with his thumbs hooked in his belt, eyes darting over Boaz's shoulder toward the faint groans echoing from within. Behind him stood two townsmen, Rudy Sharp from the stables and Mr. Denke from the mercantile, both chewing on judgment like old tobacco. "She's still here, then?" Nolan said, his words more breath than sound. Boaz nodded once. "You know what they're saying. That girl's no kin to you, and that baby, well, we don't take kindly to bastards being born under false names." Boaz said nothing. He leaned one shoulder against the doorframe, eyes half-lidded but alert. Nolan cleared his throat, shifting. "We got a place for her. The mission house in Red Hollow. It's clean. Got a bed. Nuns, too. She said it hurts." Boaz replied, voice low, steady. "That's enough." Nolan blinked, startled by the simplicity of it. "Look, Bo, I'm trying to be decent here." But the door was already closing. A final thud, not angry, just done. Inside, Clara had shifted on her side, her hands clutching at the quilt like it was a lifeline. Boaz stepped into the room and knelt beside her, placing a damp cloth against her forehead. Her eyes fluttered open, storm gray and glassy. "They came," she murmured. He nodded. "What did you say? That you're staying?" A faint smile touched her lips before another contraction twisted her face. She bit her lip, hard, a moan slipped free before she could stop it. Boaz's hand hovered, not touching, never unless asked. "Miss Waverly's on her way." Outside, the goats stirred restlessly as if they, too, felt the shift in the air. The storm was no longer in the distance. It had arrived, and it was coming from within her. Boaz built the fire higher. He boiled water, laid out clean cloths, tried to recall the way his wife had screamed years ago, how long it had lasted, how still she had gone before the end. He hadn't known enough then. He hadn't known how to help. But this time he would not sit outside. By the time Miss Waverly arrived, Clara was too far along to greet her. The old midwife didn't speak much, just nodded to Boaz and got to work. She moved like someone who had done this through war, through famine, through worse. "I'm not ready," Clara gasped, clawing at the sheets. "It's not time. I'm not ready." Boaz knelt beside her and took her hand, not soft, not romantic, but anchoring. "I'll breathe with you." Tears pooled at the corners of her eyes, but she nodded. The cabin filled with sound. The snap of fire, the urgent instructions of Miss Waverly, the rise and fall of Clara's ragged breath. Hours folded in on themselves. Time bent around pain. Clara cried out once, sharp and feral, and Boaz didn't flinch. He only whispered, "You're not alone." Then silence, followed by the smallest, most stubborn cry. Clara's head lolled back, her hair soaked through. Miss Waverly wrapped the newborn in soft flannel, then placed the bundle in Clara's waiting arms. The girl was impossibly tiny, her skin flushed, fists curled in protest. "Hope," Clara whispered, brushing her lips against the baby's damp forehead. "Her name is Hope." Boaz watched them, the ache in his chest blooming slow and deep. His eyes stung, though no one would have guessed it. He turned toward the fire, afraid to interrupt the sacred shape of the moment. Yet something in him shifted, like a beam settling into place, no longer bearing weight alone. A sharp knock returned him to the present. Again, Boaz opened the door slower this time. Sheriff Nolan stood alone now, holding a worn paper in one hand. "She's got no family," Nolan said without greeting. "And the town says she don't belong here. You want to keep her, you'll need to make it right in writing." Boaz reached into the inner pocket of his coat and handed over a folded paper, creased, signed, stamped. Nolan's eyes narrowed as he read it. "Marriage certificate, dated yesterday," Boaz replied. "You serious about this?" Boaz didn't answer. He didn't need to. Nolan held the paper like it burned. "Well, then I reckon she's Mrs. Calder now." He hesitated, cleared his throat, then nodded once and stepped off the porch. The cabin door shut with finality. Inside, Clara had fallen asleep, the baby tucked beside her like a secret only the two of them shared. Miss Waverly packed her satchel in silence, her eyes warm, her expression unreadable. "She'll need time," she said softly to Boaz as she passed. "About time," he said. Miss Waverly gave him a long look, then disappeared into the hush of evening. Boaz stood at the edge of the room, watching mother and child. The fire had died to embers. He thought of the cradle he had never finished building all those years ago. He thought of the wooden horse, now tucked beside Clara's pillow. He thought of how his cabin, always too quiet, now breathed with the rhythm of life. Later, when Clara woke, she found him on the porch, the rocking chair creaking beneath his weight. She wrapped the baby in a blanket and stepped out slowly, barefoot, the sky pale with dusk. "She's asleep," she said. He nodded. "She smells like milk and pine sap." A ghost of a smile passed his lips. She leaned against the post beside him. "You didn't have to do all this." "I know." They rocked in silence. "I was scared she'd be born into a world that didn't want her," Clara whispered. Boaz stared out toward the hills, where stars were just beginning to claim the sky. "Let him talk," he said again, but this time there was something else in his voice. Iron, maybe, or promise. And then, softer, "This is a good place to be born." Clara looked at him, something unreadable passing through her eyes. She held Hope closer, her face turning toward his. But from beyond the tree line came a sound. Carriage wheels, hurried steps, a woman's voice shouting Clara's name. Not angry, not cold, familiar. Clara stepped off the porch, the baby held tight. Boaz rose slowly behind her. Out of the dust came Delilah, and her face, for once, held no judgment, only tears.